In 1628, a 9-year-old boy was led into a courtroom in Würzburg, Germany. He wasn't there to testify. He was there to confess. Within 3 days, he had named 14 adults. Within a week, he was dead. His execution was recorded in official documents. His name was added to lists that stretched across pages. And then, the process simply continued. What happened in Europe between 1560 and 1660 killed tens of thousands of people. But the killing was never the point. Something else was being built, step by step, case by case, body by body. A machine that didn't need fuel, a machine that didn't need belief, a machine that only needed repetition. By the time it stopped, entire towns had been emptied, families had been erased, and everyone left standing had learned the same lesson. Stay quiet, stay invisible, never stand out. This is the story of what that machine actually did. Not the folklore version, not the simplified version taught in school, the documented version. The one with names, dates, and procedures recorded in court archives that still exist today. And why it worked so well that parts of it are still running now. The witch hunts are often placed in the medieval period, in the so-called Dark Ages, a time of ignorance and superstition before enlightenment arrived. That is completely wrong. They happened later between roughly 1560 and 1660, during what Europe called the Renaissance and the Reformation. An age of printing presses, universities, international trade, and expanding literacy. Martin Luther posted his theses in 1517. The Malleus Maleficarum was printed in 1486. The most intense witch hunts happened in the 1600s. These events overlapped. The same society that produced Galileo, Shakespeare, and the foundations of the scientific method was also burning people alive in town squares. This was not a contradiction. It was a feature. Underneath the surface of cultural progress, Europe was coming apart. The Protestant Reformation split Christianity into competing factions. Catholic and Protestant territories fought for survival, legitimacy, and control. The 30 Years' War, which lasted from 1618 to 1648, would eventually kill approximately 8 million people. Roughly 20% of the population in affected regions. Plague outbreaks returned in waves. The Black Death never fully disappeared. Smaller epidemics swept through towns every few years. Harvests failed repeatedly. The period between 1560 and 1660 included what historians now call the Little Ice Age, decades of colder temperatures that shortened growing seasons and devastated crops. Governments were fragile. Borders shifted constantly. Local authorities competed with regional powers. Kings fought with nobles. Everyone fought with everyone else. In the middle of all this chaos, ordinary people were trying to survive. And when things went wrong, as they constantly did, people asked why. Why did the crops fail? Why did the children die? Why did neighbors turn against each other? Why did everything feel like it was falling apart? The answer could not be random chance. It could not be weather, disease, or political instability. Those explanations were too impersonal, too uncontrollable, too overwhelming. People needed a cause they could identify, and they needed someone to blame. The devil, not as a metaphor, not as a symbol, not as a distant theological concept, but as an active, present force working through human agents to destroy Christian society from within. This belief was nearly universal. Protestants and Catholics disagreed on almost everything. Worship practices, church authority, salvation, the nature of faith itself. But they agreed on this. Satan was real. His servants were real. And they lived among ordinary people disguised as neighbors. When crops failed, it wasn't weather. When children died, it wasn't disease. When communities fractured, it wasn't politics. Someone had made it happen, and that someone lived nearby. Certain people attracted suspicion more than others, and the pattern was remarkably consistent across regions. Widows without family support, women who lived alone after their husbands died, had no male protection and little economic security. They were visible, and they were vulnerable. Healers who used herbs and charms. Folk medicine had existed for centuries, but now these practices were reinterpreted as demonic. Midwives present when births went wrong. Infant and maternal mortality rates were extremely high. When tragedy occurred, the person present became the explanation. People involved in disputes, arguments over property, livestock, or debts could linger for years. When misfortune followed, the argument was remembered. People who didn't attend church regularly. In a time of religious warfare, irregular attendance signaled something dangerous. People who were simply disliked. Sometimes there was no clear reason at all. Just years of accumulated resentment, envy, or discomfort. Once someone was named, they became the explanation for everything that had gone wrong. The failed harvest 3 years ago, she cursed the fields. The livestock that died last winter, he made a pact. The stillborn child, she was there when it happened. Fear didn't require evidence, it required a name. In 1486, two German inquisitors, Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger, published a book called the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches. It wasn't the first text about witchcraft. Books about magic, demons, and evil had existed for centuries, but this one was different. It was systematic, organized, procedural. It explained how witchcraft worked, how witches operated, how they were recruited by the devil, how to identify them, how to question them, and most importantly, how to justify what came next. The book was printed across Europe, translated into multiple languages, and distributed to courts, churches, and legal authorities. Between 1486 and 1600, it went through 28 editions. It became a reference manual, and it normalized a process. The Malleus made several key arguments. First, witchcraft was real, organized, and widespread. This was not folklore. It was an actual conspiracy. Second, witches operated in secret. They hid among ordinary people. They appeared normal. This meant anyone could be a witch. Third, witches would always deny their activities. Denial was expected. Therefore, denial was not evidence of innocence. It was evidence of deception. Fourth, physical evidence could be found on the body. Marks, scars, moles, or areas insensitive to pain indicated a pact with the devil. Fifth, confession was the goal. Everything in the process was designed to produce confession. This logic created a closed system. Accusation triggered investigation. Investigation always found something. The accused denied it. Denial proved guilt. Interrogation produced confession. There was no exit. Once this framework was established, courts across Europe began following similar procedures. The process had distinct steps. First, accusation. Someone made a claim. A neighbor reported strange occurrences. A relative mentioned suspicious behavior. Sometimes a child repeated something they had heard. Proof was not required. Suspicion was enough. Second, arrest. The accused was taken from their home, often at night without warning. They were separated from family and community. Isolation prevented escape, discouraged support, and began breaking down the accused's sense of reality. Third, examination. The body was searched for marks. Any irregularity became potential evidence. Needles were used to prick the skin. If there was no reaction, it was recorded as proof. These examinations were often public. The humiliation was intentional. Fourth, interrogation. Pain was sometimes applied. Thumb screws, leg vices, strappado, racks, but pain was not always necessary. Exhaustion was often more effective. Sleep deprivation, constant questioning, disorientation, loss of time, hallucinations. After several days, most people could not think clearly. And here is the critical part. Interrogators did not wait for the accused to invent a story. They supplied one. You flew through the air at night. You attended a gathering in the forest. You met the devil there. He appeared as a man dressed in black. You signed a pact. You renounced God. These were not questions. They were statements. Eventually, the accused repeated them back, sometimes word for word. This was recorded as confession. And confession did not end the process. It expanded it. Because after confession, the same final question was always asked. Who else was there? Every name led to another arrest. Every arrest led to another interrogation. Every interrogation produced more names. The system fed itself. People learned quickly what accusation meant. Defending a neighbor made you suspect. Questioning the authorities made you suspect. Silence became the only safe position. In Würzburg, Prince Bishop Philipp Adolf von Ehrenberg oversaw one of the most intense witch hunts in European history. In just 5 years, at least 900 people were executed. Children as young as 7, university students, priests, city officials, even relatives of judges. A document from 1629 lists 29 executions carried out in a single batch. Among them were a girl of 9 or 10, a boy of 12, the prettiest girl in Würzburg, a multilingual student, and a wandering boy of 12. Age offered no protection. Education offered no protection. Status offered no protection. Property was seized. Trial costs were charged to the accused. Families were left with nothing. Sometimes the families were accused next. Trials generated revenue. Confessions generated more trials. The machine became self-sustaining. In Bamberg, Prince Bishop Johann Georg II Fuchs von Dornheim built a specialized facility known as the Drudenhaus, the witch house. Approximately 600 people were executed there. Among them was Johannes Junius, the mayor of Bamberg. During imprisonment, he smuggled a letter to his daughter. The letter still exists. He described the torture, the threats, the forced confession. And he wrote, "They say I have confessed, that is true. But how I came to confess, God in heaven knows." He was burned alive 3 days later. Similar patterns appeared across Europe. Trier, Ellwangen, Scotland, the Basque region, later Salem. The numbers varied, the procedures varied, but the structure remained the same. Accusation, isolation, interrogation, confession, execution, new accusations. The executions were public, designed to be witnessed, not to mourn, but to teach. Accusation was more dangerous than guilt. Innocence did not matter. Silence was survival. The system did not persist because everyone believed in witchcraft. It persisted because it justified itself. Each confession proved the system worked. Each execution proved the threat was real. Questioning it meant admitting past killings might have been wrong. That never happened. Between 40 and 60,000 people were executed. Most were women. Many were elderly. Almost all were vulnerable. The machine killed tens of thousands, but it controlled millions. And the most disturbing part is this. The witch hunts did not end because people became kinder. They ended because the system began consuming people in power. When judges, mayors, and nobles appeared on execution lists, the machine slowed. Not from compassion, from self-preservation. The witch hunts ended. The system did not. It only changed what it hunted. The histories that disturb us most are the ones that show us what we are still capable of. Every subscription helps